Welcome back to Billionaire Success Lessons. Today, I want to tell you the story of a man whose journey reminds us that success is not always born in a garage, and it is not always built through loud charisma or dramatic headlines. Sometimes, success is built through discipline, hard thinking, resilience, and the willingness to keep improving a vision over decades. Charles Koch did not begin by creating a company from nothing with no support around him. He was born into a business. Make his path simple. In some ways, it made it harder. Because when you are born near power, the world does not ask whether you can dream. It asks whether you can carry responsibility, whether you can transform inheritance into innovation, and whether you can become more than the shadow of the person who came before you. Charles Koch's life became the answer to those questions. He went from a young engineer, returned to Wichita, to the longtime leader of Koch, turning a much smaller family business into one of the largest private companies in America. Charles Koch was born in 1935. And his early years did not shape him into a man looking for easy comfort. His father, Fred Koch, was demanding. Toughness left a mark on him. He attended MIT, where he eventually earned a bachelor's degree in general engineering, a master's degree in nuclear engineering, and another master's degree in chemical engineering. After graduating, he stayed in Boston and went to work at the consulting firm Arthur D. Little. That part of the story matters because it shows that before Charles, he first built technical discipline and independent experience outside the family business. He did not begin as a symbol. He began as a young engineer, trying to find his own path. And that path at first was not supposed to lead back home. Charles later wrote that he entered MIT with no intention of returning to Wichita to work for his father. He wanted his own direction. He wanted his own identity. But in 1961, Fred Koch asked him to come back and help run the family businesses, then known as Rock Island Oil and Refining Company, and the much smaller Koch Engineering Company. Charles initially refused because he feared to try new things. That fear tells us something important. Even then, he was not looking for a comfortable title. He was looking for room to think, to experiment, and to build. He finally returned when his father promised him real authority. That moment was one of the great turning points in his life. It was not glamorous. It was not public. But it was the moment when possibility and responsibility finally collided. That is one of the deepest lessons in Charles Koch's story. Sometimes success does not begin with excitement. Sometimes it begins with a difficult you feel fully certain about what it will cost. Not because the road looked easy, but because he saw an entrepreneurial opportunity inside a business that still had room to grow, improve, and evolve. He was still young, still ambitious, and still learning. But he was no longer only an engineer. He was beginning to become a builder. By 1966, Charles Koch had become president of Rock Island. And after his father died in 1967, he became chairman and chief executive officer. In 1968, the company was renamed Koch Industries in Fred Koch's honor. That transition could have broken a weaker person. Taking over after a founder dies is one of the hardest things in business. Founders are not just executives. They are myths, symbols, and standards. To follow them is to inherit not just the company, but the comparison. Every choice gets measured against the original builder. Every weakness gets magnified. And in Charles Koch's case, he was not stepping into a quiet company. He was stepping into a business with significant assets, deep family ties, and a future that was still unwritten. This is where Charles Koch's journey becomes powerful in a different way. From the classic startup story, he did not simply preserve what he inherited. He transformed it. Main business was a crude oil gathering system in Oklahoma. Under his leadership, it grew into a broad group of companies with a huge global workforce, operations in dozens of countries, and annual revenues in the hundreds of billions. That is not inheritance standing still. That is a long, disciplined transformation. And let's pause there because people often admire the beginning of success, but they underestimate the endurance required to build over 50 or 60 years. Charles Koch did not become influential through one big moment. He did not get lucky once and ride that wave forever. He spent decades thinking, refining, expanding, and reinvesting. He understood something many people never fully learn. Real success is not only about making money. It is about building systems that can create value again and again and again. That kind of thinking requires patience. It requires long-term discipline. It requires resisting the temptation to chase short-term applause at the cost of future strength. One of the central reasons Koch grew so dramatically under his leadership was the management philosophy Charles Koch developed, long known as market-based management, and this framework was built around ideas of human progress and mutual benefit, with the goal of helping individuals turn by creating value for others. It was not just a slogan. It became a core operating philosophy for how the company was led, how decisions were made, and how people inside the organization were expected to think. In other words, Charles Koch did not just run a company. He tried to build a way of thinking that could scale across it. That tells us something essential about his success. He was not only a manager, he was a systems thinker. Some leaders rely on force of personality, some rely on instinct. Charles Koch seems to have believed that institutions get stronger when they are guided by principles people can actually apply. That is a very different model of leadership. It is quieter. It is less theatrical, but in many ways it is more durable. Because a company built only around that person is gone. A company built around repeatable principles has a better chance of lasting. Still, his road was not smooth. One of the hardest chapters in his life came through conflict inside the family itself. In the 1980s, Charles and his brother David bought out the interests of their brothers William and Frederick. That fact points to a much harder truth behind the scenes. Wealth, family, and power can create conflict as well as comfort. Many people look at, but family businesses often carry their own emotional weight. Disagreements are not only about money. They become about trust, control, history, and identity. Charles Koch had to lead through that kind of pressure too. He was not only building a company, he was doing it inside a family. Legacy complex enough to produce deep internal conflict. And that matters because it makes the story more human. It reminds us that success, it changes the shape of the pain. The higher the stakes, the more complicated the conflicts become. To carry leadership through that kind, it takes emotional endurance. It takes the ability to keep moving even when the people around you are not fully aligned. When the burden is heavy, and when every decision echoes through both family and business. Over the years, Koch expanded far beyond petroleum. It moved deeply into manufacturing, consumer products, building materials, healthcare, electronics, and software. This diversification is one of the clearest signs of Charles Koch's long-range vision. He did not want a company trapped in a single lane. He wanted a platform that could evolve as industries changed. That is a huge lesson for anyone building something meaningful. If you want to last, you cannot be loyal only to. You must be loyal to. Even if that means expanding far beyond your original identity. There's also something deeply instructive about the way Charles Koch thought about profit in his public work, especially around the ideas behind good profit. He drew a distinction between profit earned by creating real value and profit earned through distortion or short-term exploitation. Of his views or not, the underlying principle is powerful, Long-term business success becomes more meaningful when it is connected to value creation rather than mere extraction. That is one reason his management philosophy keeps returning to contribution, mutual benefit, and helping people achieve. In his telling, the best organizations are not just efficient, they are productive in a way that makes life better for others. That philosophy also extended beyond business into philanthropy. In 2003, Charles Koch founded Stand, together a philanthropic community, a wide range of change makers. Over his lifetime, he has donated enormous sums to nonprofit causes, whether one focuses on the business side of his life or the philanthropic side. The pattern is similar. Charles Koch has spent decades trying to build frameworks in communities that any single moment are headlined. And that gives his story another dimension. He did not stop at corporate growth. He moved into books, philanthropy, and public ideas. He became the author of Good, Profit, and later co-authored Believe in People, continuing to push his view that individuals and institutions flourish when they remove barriers, create opportunity, and empower people from the bottom up. Again, whether everyone agrees with his conclusions is not the point of this story. The point is that Charles Koch did not treat success as a finish line, a platform for bigger questions. What kind of society helps people thrive? What kind of institution lasts? What kind of leadership produces meaningful contribution rather than just expansion? There is an important lesson there for anyone listening today. Too many people think success means finally reaching a place where the work is over. Most often show the opposite. Success creates the responsibility to ask harder questions. What are you building? Why are you building it? Who benefits if you succeed? What values can survive when the pressure grows? Charles Koch's story suggests that he spent much of his life wrestling with those questions. Not just chasing a number. Another powerful thing about his journey is that it was built through sustained thought, not just sustained hustle. Charles Koch is often described as an engineer, and you can feel that in the structure of his career. He did not simply push harder, he tried to think better. He tried to build a philosophy, a framework, and an architecture for decision making. That is valuable because many people confuse movement with progress. They stay busy, but they do not get wiser. Charles Koch's example suggests a different model. Step back, understand the system, identify the principles, and then act in a way that compounds over time. Even his later transition shows that kind of thinking. He became chairman and chief executive officer in 1967 and later moved into a co-chief executive. Structure is part of a leadership change. That kind of transition matters because it shows he was thinking about continuity, not simply control. Great leaders eventually have to ask whether what they built can outlive them. They have to care not only about achievement, but about succession. The strongest legacy is not the one that depends on you forever. It is the one that remains strong after others begin to carry it too. So what can we really learn from the life of Charles Koch? We can learn that having a head start does not remove the need for discipline. It may actually increase it. We can learn that leadership is not proven by title, but by transformation. We can learn that long-term value creation matters more than short-term applause, and reinvestment can turn a modest business into a global one. We can learn that difficulty does not disappear when success grows. It often becomes more complex, especially when family, ownership, and identity are involved. And we can learn that the most durable success is built when a person keeps asking not just how to win, but how to create value that lasts. If you're listening to this during a season where your life feels complicated, where your path is not as dramatic as other people's, where your struggle is more internal than visible, Charles Koch's story has something to say to you. Not every meaningful life begins with a dazzling public leap. Some lives are built in quieter, harder ways. Some people have to prove themselves, not against poverty, but against expectation. Some people have to carve out identity inside inheritance. Some people have to learn that real success is not escaping responsibility, but growing large enough to carry it well. And maybe that is the deepest power of this story. Charles Koch was not only trying to build a company, he was trying to build a life of contribution, a philosophy of value creation, and institutions capable of lasting beyond him. You may never lead a global company. You may never oversee billions in revenue, but you can't still take the same lesson into your own life. Think long term. Keep learning, build principles, create value for others, and refuse to let your circumstances, whether privilege or hardship, become an excuse for drifting. Real achievement begins when responsibility becomes purposeful. In the end, Charles Koch's story is not just about wealth. It is about stewardship, identity, reinvention, and endurance. It is about a young man who did not plan to return home, but did, and then spent decades transforming a smaller family business into a global enterprise. It is about the pain of family conflict, the discipline of reinvestment, and the power of building around principles rather than impulse. And that is exactly why his journey deserves a place here on Billionaire Success Lessons. Because his life reminds us that success is not only about starting something. Sometimes it is about seeing deeper, thinking longer, and building stronger than the world expected.